Welcome back to the Marvel Snap video. This afternoon, I'm going to be talking about the top 5 deck lists I would recommend for climbing the Marvel Snap ladder. These are all decks that I think are powerful and pretty consistent, and they're excellent for converting into solid cube wins, assuming you are snapping appropriately and retreating when it makes sense. It's really important to note, though, that that second part is almost more important than whatever particular deck list you're playing in Marvel Snap. Even a great player playing an excellent deck is not going to make a lot of headway on the snap ladder if you're not snapping and retreating appropriately. Without further ado, let's dive on into the first deck list now. First up, we have what is my pick for potentially the most underrated deck in Marvel Snap right now, and that is the Lockjaw Thor deck. Lockjaw, really powerful enabler here. When you play a card here, swap it with a card in your deck. And the other key card for this archetype alongside it is Wasp, giving you a 0 energy card to play into that Lockjaw path early to swap for a very potent card in our deck. You'll note that we have a full 6 cards that cost 5 plus energy in this deck, which is why, in addition to Lockjaw, we also have Jubilee here as another way to cheat these large threats into play. Thor works quite well with Lockjaw as well. It's Mjolnir being another 0 cost card that makes our other 3-drop more powerful. And then Jane kind of ties the whole package together by not only drawing Mjolnir out of the deck for Thor, but also grabbing Wasp to give us multiple cards to play out to Lockjaw's path on that final turn. This deck has a ton of stats with things like Hulk, Giganto, and Infinite, and Vision also gives us a little bit of flexibility because if this flips out of the Lockjaw path, we can then move it to somewhere else to give us additional Lockjaw flips over the course of the game. You can find a link to this deck list in the video description down below, as well as a video of me playing it in some highlights as well. Up next, we have Sera Negative. Mr. Negative, one of the more powerful build-around cards in Snap. On reveal, swap the power and cost of all cards in your deck. Because this is so powerful, the second key card in this deck is definitely Psylocke. Being able to have that extra energy on the third turn to play Mr. Negative sooner means we get to draw more of those powerful cards over the course of the game. In addition to Mr. Negative making our cards like Iron Man, Mystique, Blue Marvel, and Magic all cheaper, our deck's other namesake in Sera can reduce the cost of cards that were already in our hand. The big upside to playing this archetype in the metagame right now is I think this is definitely the best 8 cube deck in the format. I say that because between Mr. Negative and Sera's discounts, this deck generates incredibly large swings in the final turn of the game, often adding 40 plus power to the board on the back of Iron Man and Mystique copying Iron Man, giving you double ups in 1 or 2 locations. You can find a link to this deck list in the video description down below, along with a video of me playing it in some highlights. Up next, we have Death Wave, a powerful archetype based around its 2 namesake cards here, with Death starting off at 9 energy and offering 12 power, but having her cost reduced by 1 for each card that's destroyed over the course of the game. And then Wave here, 3 energy, 3 power card that says on reveal, next turn cards in both players' hands cost 4. The key interaction between Wave and Death here is that Wave sets Death's cost to 4, and then Death's cost reduction is applied. So the basic idea that we're trying to set up with this deck is in the early game we destroy at least 2 cards with our destroy package that we have to fill out the bottom end, and then on turn 5 we wave, which means Death will be 2 energy or less, and then any other card in our hand will cost 4, so we'll get to make 2 plays on the final turn of the game while our opponent will be locked into just 1 4-mana play. Our 2 plays will be Death and then one of 2 other powerful effects, whether it's Arrow to drag your opponent's single card to a spot where they don't want it to be, or Magneto, just allowing us to put an incredible amount of additional stats into play. This deck has a lot of really deterministic wins going into the final turn, but I think that also makes it a deck that's a little bit worse at farming those bigger cube wins against experienced players, because they'll frequently know when they're locked out. So if you're going to be playing Death Wave, I think acknowledging when your hand is good early and trying to snap a little bit more aggressively when your pieces are going to fall into place is definitely key to laddering up with this archetype. The deck list for this one can be found in the video description down below, as well as a highlight of me playing it in some matches as well. The Sera Disruption archetype comes in a few different ways, shapes, and forms of the Marvel Stat Ladder, all of them featuring, however, their namesake Sera, who has a powerful ongoing effect that makes the cards in your hand cost one less to a minimum of one. The disruptive elements vary from deck list to deck list as well. Typically, you'll find Killmonger and Enchantress. You'll find Arrow as well, occasionally Shang-Chi or Armor, which are notably absent from this particular list that I'm highlighting here today. And then you'll find a variety of ways to put lots of power into play for minimal amounts of resources. Lizard, Mysterio, and Maximus are cards that you see here in this list. However, things such as Brood and Mr. Sinister, backed up by something like Forge to give them more power, are something that have also been popular and potent into particular feature locations as well. The small Destroy sub-package here with Hood and Nova is also popular, but not always guaranteed to be played. I think this is an excellent deck list if you're looking to disrupt your opponent while making powerful plays in the final turn of the game. You can find a link to this deck list in the video description down below, as well as a YouTube video with some game highlights of me playing it. Finally, I saved what I think is the best deck for last, and that is Spectrum Destroyer. Destroyer, just an incredible mess of stats. 6 energy, 16 power, on reveal, destroy all your other cards. This archetype is excellent at mitigating this downside, though. We have Armor, as well as Professor X to shield one of our other paths. With the basic game plan this deck is looking to execute is stack 3 to 4 cards in one path to be able to win that one, and then play Destroyer at one of the other 2 to win that as well. If Armor and Professor X are both being a little bit shy, we also have Cosmo to suppress on reveal abilities, including our own. So if you play Destroyer into the Cosmo path, he doesn't blow up the rest of our board. The real power in this deck not only comes from just the raw stats of Destroyer, but also the fact that things like Cosmo and Armor are just powerful hate cards against a lot of other things in the metagame. Turning off your opponent's on reveals can often disable entire archetypes in some instances, in addition to enabling our own. This particular version of the Destroyer archetype is definitely my favorite because having Spectrum at the top end gives you flexibility in some key spots. There's definitely going to be places where you look at the board and realize your Destroyer isn't enough. However, Spectrum giving you more power into your ongoing path while also supporting another location could often go over the top of your opponent in a place where they could beat the Destroyer. This deck list is linked in the video description down below, along with a video of me playing it in some matches as well. What did you think of my top 5 decks list? Does it match your experience playing on the ladder, or do you think something else deserved to be in one of these spots? Let me know in a comment down below. Also, I mentioned in the beginning, but it bears repeating again. It doesn't matter how good your deck list is. It doesn't matter how good your plays are if you are not snapping and retreating appropriately. I can't tell you the number of times I've had someone comment on a video that they can't manage to be cube positive with a deck that I've posted, and it really just comes down to those snapping heuristics. A good player snapping well and retreating appropriately is going to do better with a poor deck than another player not doing those things in the correct order. Remember, if you enjoyed today's video, tap that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. I post Marvel Snap tidbits like this, as well as deck highlights here 7 days a week, and you wouldn't want to miss anything. Thanks for being one of the awesome folks that watched all the way through to the end. We'll see you again real soon, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day.